God, you're just a man.
Hey guys, welcome to the show, and this is another You Are Not Aries episode in which I try to keep things short. I'll do my best. I don't always succeed, but I'll do what I can. So a while ago in the Facebook group, we had a question from Brian, and he said, with no explanation, what are some truisms you've learned in your martial arts career? And we talked about that, and a truism is just like this kind of truth. With or without the trademark attached to it, if you like, that you discover like, okay, this is actually true. As always, this is going to be in your own experience. And that was kind of the idea, I think, from Brian, is that to check with other people, okay, what do you think is true that you've learned? And got a couple of really good ones that I liked. And he said, for instance, 10 seconds is a long time when you're getting punched in the head. That is true. I know. I don't know in which way that Brian meant this one, but I do know that he was my demo partner for one of my last videotapes that I made with Paladin Press, Tiger Snake, in which I put him in a Bulletman suit. So that is the fast defense guys, Bill Kipp. He let me borrow the Bulletman suit, in which you have this huge helmet on and so on, and protective gear, and you can hit full force on that suit. I'm like, not hold back. I wasn't holding back. So we did a scenario in which at one point it was like a robbery. He was going for a gun, and I immediately leap into heroic action and take him down. And I'm just for a few seconds just punching him in the face, aka the helmet, as hard as I can, non-stop. And he said afterwards that, it felt, I mean, it didn't hurt, but just that the impact and the whole experience was like, after a while, it's like, okay, enough already. And then a few seconds can seem like a really long time. I found that to be incredibly true as well, is that, especially when I was younger and training with guys that were so much better than me, that like a 3-minute round felt like 3 hours. And in reality, it was just over in a flash, really. But it's just that you were getting nowhere, and it was horrible. You were getting kicked and punched the whole time, and there was nothing you can do. There was this one time I went training with a boxer in Brussels, and he was really good. I mean, this is a long time ago. It's maybe 30 years ago. I was much more of a kicking technique guy, and my punches weren't all that great, so I wanted to improve. Well, with him, went into the ring with the technical training, and then we sparred, and he just owned me. I mean, anything I did, he just punched me in the face, and that was a really long round. So yes, 10 seconds is a long time when you're getting punched in the face. Patrick said something. I said, you never know who you're standing next to, and that's a really good advice as well. Different ways you can take this one, but I found it to be true that you can never underestimate or overestimate certain people. I've talked about this before at the first European Wushu Championships that I attended. I was competing in Sancho, in Sanda, and so this one guy, forget if it was an Italian or a Spanish guy, either or, he was warming up with the rest of us, and he was shadow boxing, and it's just like lightning fast strikes, punches, kicks. I mean, literally people stopped to watch him shadow box. And I was like, oh my God, and he's in my weight class. And then when we saw him fight, it was all gone. All the technique and the speed was gone. He just couldn't make it work outside of the training area. And then there was this other guy. That was the last European Championships that I attended when I was national trainer. There was this guy, I forget, it was an Eastern European country, but I forget. There were two guys. That was what we thought was the fighter and the coach. Coach was the fighter was this, like, head shaven, scars in his face, rough looking guy, very athletic, very muscular. And the coach was this smaller, pot-bellied guy who would drink like half-liter glasses of beer each time we went to lunch and dinner. You can imagine our surprise when we saw that coach actually put on the gloves and the gear and compete and win. He won in his category. He beat everybody up. So if you looked at him, you would think it just, that it's your crazy drunk uncle. That's what he looked like. Small, pot-bellied, older, always smiling, always goofing around. And he was just destroying these big, strong guys. So you never know who you're standing next to. And it goes in different directions as well. You might be sitting next to somebody who looks pretty scary, and that might be a nice guy. I have resting grumpy face, so my neutral expression, people think I'm angry. I'm not though, but that's what it is. There's so many places that I've seen that people are actually scared of me just when I walk into the room, and I haven't even said or done anything. Obviously, people who don't know me, some who do know me, but then I think they deserved it. But that's another story. I'm kidding, by the way. But the point is that you could be standing next to somebody who looks just like a regular dude, or a beautiful person, man or woman, doesn't matter, very attractive, and it turns out to be this just complete and utter psycho. I've met my fair share of those too. So keep that in mind. Don't assume things about people. It's very easy to and end up being totally wrong. And I'm quickly just going over some other of the truisms that people said. Douglas said the most important ability is to be in the position of advantage. I don't know about the most important ability, but I do think it is a truism that if you can find yourself in a position of advantage, everything just becomes so much easier. Why would you force yourself to always be in a position of disadvantage, or just be content with a position of equality with your opponent, meaning you both have the same chances? Why would you not try to be in a position of advantage? You might not always get one, so you should, in my opinion, train to handle situations of disadvantage and of equality. But it makes sense to me that you should try to have a position of advantage if it is at all possible to get one. And if you can get one right away, maybe work your way towards one. Why? Because that's the nature of fighting and self-defense and violence, is that people will use every advantage they can get. And if you cannot overcome their advantage, well, then you lose. And whatever losing may mean, that'll depend on the context of what that confrontation is all about. But if you can manage that, avoid that situation, then you have the advantage and the other guy has to struggle to overcome you. Wouldn't that be so much better? I think it would. So that was one from Douglas, and there's one more that I want to address, and this is mine. This is what I wrote at the end. I wrote, most of those not studying violence do not understand your motivations to do so. I found this to be very, very much true. Notice that I said studying violence. I did not say training martial arts. I did not say training self-defense or training combat sports. I said studying violence. I wouldn't say that violence is taboo in society nowadays, in modern Western society. I would say that there are so many misconceptions about it that it's very difficult sometimes to have a conversation with people who are not interested in that subject at all. Because it's so far out of their, not even field of expertise, but just field of realistic knowledge. They just have very unrealistic information in their heads, or ideas that are just like, okay, you can have, the only reason that you can have this idea is because it's not going to be tested and your life doesn't depend on it. So it's a safe idea to have. But as soon as, it starts getting real, then, that's just not going to work. And then you're going to have to rethink it. So for you, the best thing is then to stay safe so that your ideas and thoughts and opinions are never tested. That's been my experience for a long time. It's also one of the reasons that, for instance, in my family, my family and with my in-laws, I hardly ever talk about my work in that area. We hardly ever talk about violence, self-defense, not even martial arts or anything, all the stuff that I do. It's not that they don't know that I do this stuff, it's just that it's just not of interest to them. I disagree. I think everybody should be aware of, violence and have at least a working knowledge. You don't have to focus on it, but it's something that you should know something about. You live in society, you could be at risk, you could encounter situations in which you actually need that information and do something about it. But that doesn't mean that you should become an expert or spend so much of your time studying it like I do. But I found that nobody cares, and I'm fine with that. They don't have to care. They don't have to care like I do. They don't have to have the same interest like I do. It's perfectly fine. But that also means that for them, for my family, I'm guessing many of them look at me like Wim's a strange guy. So what are you doing with all that violence stuff and posting those Patreon violence analysis video of robberies and what have you and street fights? Why can't he just watch the soccer game like us? That's pretty much, I think, what my brothers-in-law think. So it's very hard to explain certain things. And I've learned over the years to not really talk about that. It's not that I don't want to, and it's certainly not that I'm ashamed of what I do or uncomfortable talking about it at all. It's just that we don't share enough common knowledge to have a meaningful conversation. Without that, it is just very difficult. To have a meaningful conversation, I would have to front load so much knowledge and information and experience that it would be like a lecture, and that's not fun to do with people you care about. So I'd have to be the guy who explain everything to them. But that doesn't work. The other thing is also that if I don't do that, and they have these very out of touch with reality ideas of violence, is that I would have to basically be the guy who's always telling them, well, actually, you're wrong about that because of X, Y, Z, or, well, it's not wrong per se, but there's a whole lot more that comes to what you just said. You can't just kick the guy in the nuts and think that that's all it takes. Especially as a woman, when you have to defend yourself, just kick him in the nuts. That's not bad advice per se. It is not great advice either. It's not that it can't work. It's just that that's not the only thing you should know before committing to using violence on somebody who's aggressing you, and thinking you'll get away with that and not eventually end up being victimized. The odds are pretty bad that this is gonna happen. If that's all you know and all you know how to do. So, and I am fine with that. I don't mind that. I'm okay talking about other stuff. But there is something about if others know that you study violence, is that it's kind of uncomfortable for them because it tends to imply that you are more comfortable with violence than they are. And that makes you dangerous, that makes you different, that makes you somebody that they maybe don't really know how to place in their own head as to who are you, what are you to me, and are you somebody that I can just rely upon and like and it'll be fine, or are you somebody who's potentially dangerous to me? Even if people don't explain it in that way, it's, in my experience, often a thought process that they later on recognize when we address it, or when they discover that I have nothing to prove. I don't feel the need to beat people up or show what I can do, and most people just don't know. My little nephew came over earlier today, and we goofed around in the garden a little bit, and he likes to fight with me, so I pretend to. We play fight a little bit. That's about it. That's the only thing that my in-laws see of me doing martial arts, other than the stuff that I post online. So if you are in a situation in which that's you as well, that you're in your circle of friends or family or whatever, you're the only one studying violence, then I think that, that's perfectly fine. Don't worry too much about it, but just understand that other people look at you funny. We don't really get why you do that. We're your brothers and sisters, but you're the weirdo of the family because you're all in that violent stuff. Maybe they don't even say that out loud, but I can assure you that if they don't think it right now, they at the very least did so in the past and might do again in the future, depending on just how far you go with this whole thing. Right, so that's it. That was 15 minutes. Okay, take care and stay safe.